carry me home tonight. We are young, so let's set the world on fire. We can burn brighter than the sun tonight.
And say alright, love is kinda crazy with a spooky little boy like you. You always keep me guessing, I never seem to know what you were thinking. And if a girl looks at you, it's for sure your little eye will be winking. I get confused, I never know where I stand, and then you smile and hold my hand. Love is kinda crazy with a spooky little boy like you. If you decide someday to stop this little game that you are playing, I'm gonna tell you all the things my heart has been dying to be saying. Just like a ghost, you've been haunting my dreams, but now I know you know what you see. Love is kinda crazy with a spooky little boy like you. Spooky
second night. I need to get my story straight. My friends are in the bathroom getting higher than the Empire State. My lover, she is waiting for me just across the bar. My seat's been taken by some sunglasses asking about a scar, and I know I gave it to you months ago. I know you're trying to forget, but between the drinks and subtle things, the holes in my apologies, you know, I'm trying hard to take it back. So if by the time the bar closes and you feel like falling down, I'll carry you home tonight.
and say alright. Love you're not what you seem. Love is kinda crazy with a spooky little boy like you. Spooky, yeah.
Give me a second night. I need to get my story straight. My friends are in the bathroom getting higher than the Empire State. My lover, she is waiting for me just across the bar. My seat's been taken by some sunglasses asking about a scar, and I know I gave it to you months ago. I know you're trying to forget, but between the drinks and subtle things, the holes in my apologies, you know, I'm trying hard to take it back. So if by the time the bar closes and you feel like falling down, I'll carry you home tonight. We are young, so let's set the world on fire. We can burn brighter than the sun tonight. We are young, so let's set the world on fire. We can burn brighter than the sun. Now I know that I'm not all that you got. Maybe I just thought maybe we could find new ways to fall apart. But our friends are back, so let's raise a cat. 'Cause I found someone to carry me home.
Hello everybody. Steve, let's get a real quick voice check.
1, 2, 3, ready to go.
Okay, I'm going to do a delay check. I'm going to put my fingers 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. Man, we're on delay tonight. 11, 12,000, 13,000, 14,000, 15,000, 16,000, 17,000, 18,000, 19,000, 20,000. And it looks like we're on our standard issue 20-second delay. So when you and I say something, it takes 20 seconds to get out in the world. But they can hear us. Hey, friend, Chuck, everybody, Chili Billy Chuck, OT, glad you're here. Oh, doggone it. I've totally forgot. I went outside, because I got sidetracked. I went outside today and tied up that little shuttle that Orange Tabby Garfield sent me. And where it had some room. Let me see if I can just show it on my phone real quick. And I actually strung the wire out all the way, and there it is whirling around behind me. It actually got it to work. I'm going to use that in one of my videos later. And okay, I thought it was videotaping, and apparently I was taking stills. Oh, doggone it. Oh, well, anyway. Operator headspace and timing. Another one of my grand plans foiled at the last due to my own ineptitude. It's a good thing I'm not a super criminal.
Meanwhile, Craig says, great, 20-second delay. We can send video feed from Mars faster than that.
Yes, we can. But hold on, let me close a couple of things. One thing I've learned with these live streams is close anything you don't need, because it all burns up. Space. So, well, guys, welcome to another scintillating episode of Max's Models live stream. And tonight we are going to be talking about a couple of things. But the first thing we'll be talking about is kit model gunships and the history of the gunship a little bit. I actually have the box art that you see there. This is the 1/72 scale monogram Puff the Magic Dragon. And I bought and built this kit. I think I got on eBay years ago. And this kit, to my knowledge, is the only kit that Monogram ever sold, or at least Model Airplane, that was completely pre-painted. I didn't paint it. It came out of the box like this. You just glued it together and everything. And like a lot of kids of my generation, I became aware of Puff the Magic Dragon, the AC-47, because of the movie The Green Berets. And what I was really surprised to learn was it's a model that's everybody knows of, but it's not terribly well represented. This box art was done by Morgan, and I because it says Morgan on it. I don't know who that was, or haven't been able to find anything on him. It may have just been one piece of contract art, but the
What year was that kit?
okay, that kit came out in '68, I believe.
Wow.
Puff himself came out in '66.
To be molded in color, that was way ahead of the trend. Because they didn't start molding stuff in colors on a regular basis till like the mid-'70s.
Yes. And my brother had this kit when I was a little kid. That's one reason I got it. Nostalgia. But I remember that it came out pre-painted. And I don't know if that was something they were toying with. By the way, guys, I guess everyone knows Jimmy Buffett passed away. So tonight's cough medicine will be, in his honor, will be margaritas. It's margarita night here on Max's Models. And
Chips and salsa?
well, I just had... my wife made me a lovely meat and bolognese on imitation pasta, because trying to keep the calories down. But anyway, so that makes Bob Barker, Jimmy Buffett, and Bill Richards just passed also. And celebrities, man, it doesn't pay to be one. You know, happens in threes. But anyway, so this was the first Gunship kit that came out that I could find. And I was surprised there really aren't that many, and we'll talk about a few of them. But this kit was a clean sheet kit. It was, I don't think it was from any kit that they already had in production. And it's a day build easily, because, like I say, everything's pretty much done. You just glue it together. It's got a little bitty detail. It's got the ammo box and everything in there for the gun that's exposed out the door. And I got a little curious. I mean, I did a little bit of weathering on it a long time ago. I could probably clean this up, make it a little nicer. But the kit itself, I had no complaints with. The only problem is if you want to use putty or something, then you got to mash the paints to clean it up. But I think the kit was more aimed at kids, so they could just build it and play with it. But the other kits that I found, some of them were modifications of existing kits. Because if you had a model company and you made a DC-3 or a military C-47, it only took a few extra parts to make the Gunship version, because that's exactly what the airplane was. And when I started digging around, I was a little surprised to learn. I thought I would go and find out that this was some big government project and everything, and that the Gunship was, it's a result of research and and nothing could be further from the truth. Actually, the first proposed Gunship in the American inventory was this. A de Havilland DH-4 biplane back in 1927. Some young officer realized that, hey, instead of diving on a target, dropping bombs... What?
I see Mike Machado's chimed in.
Uh-oh. Oh, it was the original TWADC-3 kit from 55. Okay, there you go. See? That's what happens when you use Scalemates as your sole source. What happens is some young officer points out, he says, hey guys, I realized while I was flying around a target that if I had someone shooting sideways, we could orbit the target and go rat-tat-tat-tat-tat instead of just, hit and run. And they basically are like, yeah, that's very nice, Lieutenant, and patting him on the head and go away. But he did write the idea up. It never went anywhere. And Smithsonian Magazine and another thing that I found went into amazing detail. And I had always assumed that, well, this was probably something that came about from, a test program, and it was not. I mean, not in the traditional sense. During World War II, or actually just before World War II, a young first lieutenant in the coastal artillery, had said, hey, we run around flying airplanes and dropping depth charges on submarines and, then fly back, maybe do a strafing run. If we were to make an airplane that had guns sticking out the side, and they were thinking like a couple of 50 calibers, we could just fly around in circles and shoot up the submarine before we can dive, because it took 5 or 10 minutes for a submarine to dive back then. And again, pat him on the head, Lieutenant, and go back to your job. And it wound up coming to naught. And the idea kept cropping up several times. And then in 63, a young Air Force captain, this is him as a colonel, but who, by the way, just passed away a year ago at 88, Ron Terry, came up with the he was working in he was an F-86 pilot, an F-100 pilot. He'd just come back from a tour in Vietnam. He'd been researching. He'd been sent over there to research, ground support techniques and everything. And he was back looking through all of because all these ideas, they didn't get just thrown away. They would get written up and stuck in folders and sort of a projects idea. And he was going through these ideas, and I have to tell you this story because it's just too cool not to tell. So he's a young captain, and he starts looking at this idea of an airplane designed to circle and shoot at a target while doing basically a turnaround to point. He remembers that him and some other guys remember, hey, they used to drop and pick up mail this way from liaison planes, turn around a point. You could lower a bucket, people could get stuff out of it, put stuff in it, you could haul it up, you didn't have to land. They were sort of thinking outside the box, but it was always the generals going, no. Silly idea. Jets come in, shoot and run, drop bombs and fly away. And so he realized that, hey, you know what? If you had an airplane with machine guns sticking out the side, instead of making passes on the infantry who are going to scatter, and by the time you get turned around and come back, they're all hiding or you can't find them or they've run off. If you could just fly around in a circle, you could really chew them up. So he came up with the idea, and he went out in a T-28 Trojan trainer and took some cameras and started doing flying around a point. He's going, look, if these were guns, we could really let the bad guys have it. And he was having trouble getting traction, but finally he got enough support that he was going to get a meeting in front of Curtis LeMay, head of the Air Force. And, the old saying that, this is how great decisions are made, and all these little witticisms we have about opportunity, knocking and that sort of stuff. Well, he's sitting outside of LeMay's office with the person that's given the briefing ahead of him. And apparently we'd lost a bunch of airplane to sappers. We lost, people forget how many airplanes we lost on the ground to mortar attacks and things like that. And base defense was a real serious problem. And he started thinking, because originally his idea was we could use this just to chase the infantry around when they're in the open. But he had an inspiration. And this is how great things come to pass. And he said, he told the guy he was with, listen, I've got an idea. Whatever I say, just try not to look surprised. So they go into LeMay's office, and he goes, yes, sir, I'm Captain Ron Terry, and this is so-and-so, and we're here because we have a great new idea for base defense. And he shifted it from, chasing infantry on the battlefield to defending the bases. And ironically, defending bases, and particularly fire bases and hamlets, is where these airplanes wound up making their bread and butter. But he explained the concept of, we orbit at low altitude in an area where we have complete air dominance, so there's no air threat, and we can just spray the enemy all day. And LeMay, who was a big gun buff, and he loved lots of firepower, he said, okay, so he gave him some support. And so Captain Terry goes down to Eglin, and the problem was this was the most back burner of back burner projects. And even in the Vietnam War, funds were not just completely unlimited. So eventually he gets a C-131 Samaritan. That is, I got a picture here somewhere. let's see. Not that one. That comes later. Not that one. That comes later. Here we go. Okay. The pictures you are about to see are a little collage I put together. But on the upper left is the C-131, and on the right, upper right, you see a C-131. They just basically took the cargo door off. And they mounted a minigun. Now, before they did this, they actually went up with cameras and did the whole mission just using cameras instead of guns. And that took a while because at first they couldn't find a crew, then they didn't have any money. You know, the operating budget was virtually non-existent. In fact, at one point, Terry used his credit card to buy parts to get this thing mounted. But eventually they were able to get the camera plane. Now they had weather issues and everything else down in Florida. So finally they eventually got the thing launched in '63. And he flew around a target taking pictures and showing, look, if these were guns, look what we could do. So they said, okay. So he talks to LeMay. He says, what do you want to use for firepower? At first they thought about a couple of machine guns, but he's like, well, how about one of these new miniguns? And I didn't realize when this was being played with, there were only 9 miniguns in the inventory, and they were all experimental. It was still an experimental system. So they mounted one on the airplane on this C-131, and basically Convair 240. They fly around the target, you know, and I think they were out over the water, and the the guy literally used a grease pencil to put a mark on his side window. He didn't have a gun sight or anything. And the results were surprisingly impressive, enough that they got a little steam. So they said, okay, take the thing to, I forget it was Hurlburt Field, and we're going to start testing it. Well, the special ops guy started slobbering all over it. This was a great idea, but the regular Air Force thought it was ridiculous. I mean, they're thinking high and fast jet fighters and everything. And the special ops guy said, listen, we're not going to use the 131 anymore. They gave that back. And by the way, they pulled the gun out of it, put the seats back in it. It went right back to hauling people and cargo. Okay. They said, look, we're using a lot of C-123 providers and old C-47s in Vietnam for all kinds of missions. They're handy, they're useful, they're slow, they're just what we need. We've got a C-47, a D, that's coming in for like overhaul and everything, and this would be the perfect platform. So they managed to get some of the miniguns mounted on the C-47. Now, one of the things that was advantageous, if you notice the bottom left, the C-47, that's what the plane actually looked like when they tested it, by the way. It was an all aluminum C-47. It wasn't in camo. And one of the things was if you look at the C-131 or the Convair 240, it has a fairly short fuselage. It's a tricycle gear, so the wings pushed way back. The C-47 having a tail wheel and long fuselage, you could stick more guns out more windows without shooting your wing off. It also was slower, which actually helped. It was actually a better platform. Being a tail dragger meant they could just hand stuff up into the airplane, which was a big advantage. It made it a lot easier to surface and service and all that good stuff. So, in fact, here is a picture of them loading a Spooky, and you can see the guys it's right there, 2 steps. And the guys at Hurlburt were shocked at how well this was working, and they got their turnaround at point and everything made, and they figured it out. And they, what Terry didn't know, he couldn't know at the time, was that he had inadvertently made some very powerful enemies. What had happened was, have you ever heard of I think it's the 1948 Key West Agreement? Steve?
No.
Not. Okay. Basically, it said that if it has wings and it shoots, it belongs to the Air Force. The Army can have cargo planes and helicopters, but if it's got fixed wings and guns, it belongs to the Air Force. And the Army was arming its helicopters, which the Air Force was already a little worried about because, let's be honest, you're talking about generals, you're talking about who gets the money. And the mission and all that kind of stuff, because the money follows the mission. Well, they were afraid that if this old lumbering cargo plane armed with a couple of miniguns could be effective, then the Army might get the bright idea because the Army still had fixed wing cargo planes like the C-7 Caribou. And they're afraid the Army might start doing something like that with its airplanes and turfism, the Washington D.C. stuff. The guys out in Vietnam in the field couldn't have given a crap less. When it did not help that originally it was not the AC-47. It was the FC-47 for fighter cargo. Oh, that went over well with the fighter pilots. Oh, boy. So, the fighter jocks are furious that their call it has an F designation. A bunch of generals are afraid that it's going to cause turfism with the Army and just political crap. Meanwhile, Terry and, oh, by the way, they did call his group Terry and the Pirates because they were literally scrounging for parts and making stuff up like the old cartoon Terry and the Pirates. So that was their nickname, Terry and the Pirates. Terry became known as the father of the gunships. But anyway, they got one of these things, an experiment, over to Vietnam, and it was an immediate hit. And you have to understand there was no night vision gear. It was a cargo plane with miniguns hanging out the side and really not a whole lot else. Had a 7-man crew, of which, of course, 5 were run the guns. But once they started defending hamlets with it, it was a bit of a game changer. In fact, they caught Vietnamese documents that told their people not to shoot at this thing. And before you ask, yes, the name Puff the Magic Dragon, which was the original one, it is from the Peter, Paul, and Mary song because fire-breathing dragon. But all the others had other names. It's and they called them Spookies for good reason. Well, they didn't build that many of them, but one of the things that was surprising about it was you have to remember the C-47 was used in Vietnam for what it was its intended purpose as basically a flying truck. All right. The nice thing about these gun mounts were the special ops guys loved because they could be removed fairly quickly, and the airplanes could go and still fly, cargo missions, beans and bullets, and haul people around, land, put the guns back in them. I don't really know how long it took, but now I'm giving you an extremely compressed story. But apparently, when Terry and the Pirates showed up the first time, in fact, it might be a little bit better if I just read it because this is the kind of thing you can't make this up. There were so many generals that were ticked off. By the way, the name of the program with the C-131 flying in circles is called Tail Chaser because it went in a circle chasing its own tail. So half the thing was he had to run around, recruiting people who were like experts on the minigun and stuff, and that was no small thing. But when they blazed away, it was really impressive. Well, there's where he briefed LeMay. So, was it Tonsanut they flew into? Okay, here. I shall read. This is from Smithsonian Magazine, so it's a pretty good source. But opposition to Terry's proposal did not sit well in Washington. In a curt reply to the general who sent the message, Vice Chief of Staff... Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I got to go up a paragraph. Terry and his team landed in South Vietnam on December 2nd, 1964. He remembers, we arrived at Tan Son Nhut and were met by a force of armed air police. They told us we were not to talk to anyone and we and our equipment would be on the next plane back to the U.S. But opposition to Terry's proposal did not sit well in Washington. In a curt reply to the general who sent the message, Vice Chief of Staff John P. McConnell, by then the Chief of Staff designate, because LeMay was due to retire in a few months, told the general, your concern is appreciated, but we cannot overlook or deny any weapon which will enhance our capability in this area of operation, and it is certainly in the Air Force interest to run the program rather than sit on the sideline commenting, end quote. And it says that Terry carried a copy of that letter with him the rest of the time he was over there in case he had any more trouble. But welcome to military infighting. So the thing racked up. It did such a good job, and they used them. Well, I don't want to give the spoiler away, but that the Air Force, realizing they had a winner on their hands, decided, you know what? Terry got promoted to major, and we're going to go with a bigger program. And that's when they came out with the AC-130A Spectres. They took the concept on a C-130 but added a lot more firepower to it. A system which has been upgraded many times and still exists in the U.S. Air Force to this day. There aren't that many kits of the Spectre made. These are 4 of them that I was able to find. I think there's a few others. But the... What?
Nothing.
Oh.
Clear my throat.
Oh, okay. So anyway, but something I didn't realize, there is another airplane called the Stinger, the AC-119K. This is basically a old C-119 cargo plane. They did the same thing with it they did with the C-47. They hung guns and cannons out the side of it and made an attacker out of it and added some upgrades the C-47 wasn't set up to handle. I always thought, just assuming that the AC-47 came first. Once it proved itself, they upgraded the C-119 and then eventually went to the C-130. But that is not correct. They went straight from they did change the name to AC instead of FC to keep the fighter guys happy. But they went straight from the Goonie Bird to the C-130. The Stinger AC-119 was simply an augment that came after the C-130. They realized, hey, we have these laying around. They're still operational. We can do this great job with them and add to what we already have, so we don't have to send a C-130 in to every time. And it was just a way to do more with what they had on hand. And the 119 didn't have that long of a service life, but it did get in the licks. But the AC-130 is still in production today, or still flown today. One of the things I was surprised to learn, though, was that they had much higher losses than I realized. They actually were, because they were down close where people could shoot back, and they were brought. A lot of them were lost in operational accidents, but some of them were shot down, and just it was a war, But I didn't realize that a lot of other countries use them. At least 6 or 7 other countries had their own variant of it. And this picture that I'm showing now are of 5 of them that are still in service in Colombia today with the Colombian military. And you may notice something looks a little bit different about these old C-47s, and that is that they're Basler conversions with turboprop engines. But I did not realize that there were still, honest to God, spooky C-47 spooky gunships out there doing the mission. And, of course, they have all kinds of frills and fancies that the originals didn't have, mainly turbine engines. But they also had some controlled flights into terrain, because these guys are flying around at night in the mountains with... and the plane, the original could carry 24,000 rounds of ammunition, which is extremely heavy. You don't appreciate how much ammunition that is. And but We're back. What happened was when I was clicking the photos off, I accidentally clicked audio input off. There we go. So I was just going to say that I just moved these things down to the bottom where I shouldn't be able to touch them by accident. So what I was saying is that Colonel Terry is, like I say, passed away last year at the age of 88, but he's still known as the father of the gunships, and there's an Air Force officer's Air Force officer. And as a former infantry type, I feel I owe something special to him because spookies were our friends. And I tell you what, I was actually on a thing one time. They told us that a spooky was orbiting. It's a training thing. They said, yeah, there's a spooky up there. I'm just looking up, just going, the fact that that guy can probably look down and see me smoking a cigarette or waving at him is a little terrifying. They don't call them, I mean, technically their name's Spectre, but, you know, they don't, spooky is a real good name for them. Good job, Colonel. Salute. So anyway, to the kits now. The only spooky kit that I've built is this one, and it's just it's a brain dead simple build. Make a good beginner kit for somebody, and and it's a good representation. There seems to be some confusion. NPC, Airfix, and Italary have all often molded kits for each other, and even Scalemates seem to be a little jumbled. But I think either the Airfix or the Italary molds may be the molds that's used for these models. I'm not really sure, but because these companies swap molds, and I almost made a comment, but somebody would be offended. But it's just one of those things that I don't know if these are the same kit in different boxes or not. If you guys have built them, let me know. And the Minicraft, I'm pretty sure, did their own. And one thing, it's a 1:144 scale, so that's going to be a tiny little build. And I did find one or two other models that were, let's see. Did I have to put the picture up here? Spooky Stingers. Huh. Oh, wait a minute. I know what I can do. Hang on. Minicraft. Transform. Oops. Ah, there we go. Do. Hold on. There we go. Oops. Wait a minute. Oh, there it is. Oh, no, that's not it. That's just the Airfix one again. I thought I grabbed a picture of it. Maybe I didn't. There's another company that makes the Gunship. Somebody I'm not really familiar with. Let me see if I've got that picture in my... Oh, hush. Did I do a screen grab of it or not? Oh, Ravel's got one. I almost forgot. And it's a 1:48. I don't know if that's the old Monogram 1:48 mold or not. And there's another company that I think that does a 1:48 scale. But remember, it's got a huge wingspan. I built that model for one of my co-workers. I mean, the civilian version, Eastern Airlines. So if you get that, it's a good kit. But although I didn't really care that much for the way they did the landing gears on it, but if you're going wheels down, it's designed to be made wheels down. If you make it wheels up, you've got a little extra work ahead of you. But it's not that big of a deal. So that was okay. Those are the I have never built one of. Oh yeah, these are all the various paints. Oops, get the right button, Max. Here are the various paint schemes. And you notice the first two were administrative colors because they were the test airplanes. I don't even know if they put camouflage on them until they got to Vietnam, but or if they even did on the first ones. But the later ones, of course, all had the Southeast Asia, and they didn't make that many of them. I forget how many it was, and they used them well, actually for a while. And when we were done, other countries copied the idea. Why not? And same basic pattern. Although it's you can buy decals for them. You can easily convert any C-47 model into one because that's what they did with the real airplane. I mean, really, they just removed the door. I mean, if you look right here, they didn't bother to modify the door. They just took it off, you know, to get that third minigun. And the miniguns could fire 500 or 1,000 rounds a minute each. So they went to that 24,000 rounds of ammo pretty quick. And it's just a terrifying piece of equipment. And, you know, people tend to forget, as wicked as a lot of platforms are, ultimately, there was an old advertisement I saw from a World War II book we had on that just had all the companies that made war materials. And it just shows a 50 caliber bullet flying through the sky. And he goes, you know, for this bullet to hit its target, you know, to knock out the enemy, it has to be manufactured. And just goes to the whole logistics chain. It has to be transported by ships, and all the food that's needed to feed the sailors, and all the gasoline that's needed to power the trucks, and just everything it takes to get this one bullet on target. And I started thinking about, wow, there really is a lot of logistics in the war, because these things are basically just trucks that are driving the bullets to the impact spot. You know, it's if you could hang a minigun out of a Cessna, you'd have a dangerous airplane. But I have not built any of these. I don't. You know what? I have built the Aurora C-119, but I have not built any of the others. I don't know if these artillery, and I'm Rodin, I probably wouldn't do, just because I've built a couple of Rodin kits and I found them to be a fight from start to finish, although they do make some really cool stuff. The artillery kit, and I think the tester's kit is I'm almost certain it's the artillery kit. So really, there's only two of them that are made. And if anybody's out there made it, yeah, the tracers, 1 in 5 tracer, but they're coming out so fast it does like a laser beam. And if you guys, if anybody's built one of these, let me know how they are to build, because the Aurora C-119 was pretty easy to build, but, you know, it's shaped a little wrong and everything, and not quite right. You know, it was Aurora.
It's an Aurora
right.
Mark of excellence.
Yeah, it was Aurora, correct. What'd you say is the worst Aurora kit you ever built?
Oh, I didn't build that many Aurora kits because I thought they were pretty horrible. Probably one of the tanks, the Russian tank, T-34.
JS3, yeah.
I thought that was a really bad kit.
Well, now I got to get one just to see how bad it is, but I want to get one that has the photoscope so I can look inside and see the real inside.
Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, when you have Cure on in 2 weeks, have him tell you about the rotoscopes.
We'll do that.
Have him tell you the story about how he had to get the pictures for what they were going to look through in the little eyepiece.
That bad, huh?
Yeah.
Well, the Smithsonian Space Magazine, The Birth of the Spooky, that's the name of it, yeah. And a lot of other airplanes have been turned into, you know, sort of spooky styled aircraft just as a matter of necessity. But the kit models, like I say, I haven't really built any of those other ones, but I thought that was just a really cool subject, because when I started, I thought it was just going to be about, hey, the Air Force came up with this idea and it was tested at Hurlburt, and I'm like, nope, nobody wanted it. You know, some young captain made it happen by convincing a general it was worthwhile. I was like, wow. I had no idea that when they first landed, they were turned away at the door. Basically, they had to have the future Chief of Staff of the Air Force say, this is going to happen, move out of the way. as a captain, it's never a good thing to upset people with stars on their shoulders. And as our good friend Matt Irvin would say, you'll do yourself a mischief. So that was really the only thing I had prepared for tonight ahead of time. And I didn't know if any of you guys had built any of these kits. I know Trey just did a C-130 recently, and Mike saying the YF-105A from Aurora Thunder Chief, stunning box art, but the worst model ever. The TFX, I actually was given one that was already built, and it didn't look like much. And the Fire Tracer fight is just fun. It is. You know, in the Army, you know, they wouldn't, we'd be done at Califax, there'd be ammo left over. They kind of like, okay, you guys just want to have a madman and shoot up the ammo. And the guys who want to go up on the range, you can see guys trying to make, trying to make circles in the air with tracers. I want to load up with nothing but tracers. And like children. They're nothing but children. And,
meanwhile, my wife told me an interesting thing today. She went to Ollie's. She said they had Tester's paint there.
Huh. I've seen it pop up in some unusual places.
Yeah. I mean, because you can't find it in a hobby store.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually saw some of it at Hobby Lobby, and they moved it to another place, just getting rid of what's in stock. It was getting pretty bare. Yeah, I have heard that supposedly a Spectre can put a round in every inch of a football field in about 10 seconds, and it wouldn't shock me if they could. One of the things and the Spectre now has a 105 millimeter howitzer in the back also, and with computing gun sights and everything, they're amazingly accurate. And of course, the pilot now has a proper heads-up display on the left side and I think they have 2 navigators on board. It's quite the operation, but it's okay. Ray says he built the 148 scale AC-47, and I assume it was a decent kit. The worst part about to me the hardest part of a C-47 is the landing gear, because that is a very unusual landing gear. And one thing I wish model companies, a couple of them have done, and I like it when they do, if you're dealing with a retractable gear airplane, is to give you the option of having the gear up or the gear down as part of the kit set, not having to shave parts off and everything to get it fit, or have it. Yeah, this goes in if you want it wheels up, and these are the parts for wheels down. It just works a lot nicer that way. I mean, I imagine all of us have built a model airplane at some point where you tried to close all the gear doors and they just wouldn't close, and you just lived with them being a little askew or something. I tried about 10 times before I finally got that SR-71 nose gear to sit right. And when I get a chance to go work, I'm going to tape it off, smear putty on it, clean it up, and smooth it down. The gear was too spindly for the DC-3. By the way, side note, now mind you, we're talking the 1980s and 90s, so all these DC-3s are 50 and 60 years old. But there was a company that operated them in Beech 18s running canceled checks and cargo. And they're kind of all over the country, but mostly in the southeastern U.S. I think it was Hannock, was the name of the company. But anyway, I knew a guy that flew Beech 18 and DC-3 for him. He said when you go to DC-3 training, they never talk about if an engine quits. They always say when. And he goes, because these are old, tired radial engines, like you are going to have an engine failure. And the airplane's pretty docile, but you better be on your game. And, I mean, they're great airplanes, but God, they're getting old. And all of the airframes, a lot of them in good shape. And there are, even though it's a good, docile airplane, there are some things you have to know about the DC-3. And one of them is that, I didn't know this till just recently. I was watching a video about how to fly one, is that the tail gets washed out. So when you go roaring down the runway, one of the things you have to do is get the tail up. That's why you see them doing wheel landings all the time, landing on their main gears and then drop the tail. If you try to do a full flare, the tail will wash out and you can actually lose control at the last second. An Otaki. He has an Otaki 1 to 100 scale. Scale that Tamiya pushed that just never quite caught on. Wasted again in our review. Well, hardly wasted, but definitely got my Jimmy Buffett Memorial margaritas. He was only 76. That's, today, that's young. Hey, Steve, did you ever notice that ages like 50 and 60 sounded old until you got there yourself and you're like, that's not old, I'm young?
Yeah, now they're dying in their 90s, and you go, well, they're still kind of young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, come on. When you were in your 20s and somebody was in their 50s, you were like, well, that's really old.
When I was a little kid, it was simple. 40 was young, 50 was old. That's how it worked. And then I turned 50. I'm like, no, 50's not old. 50's not old at all.
No.
So, the mighty DC-3. It just cracks me up that in the day of the supersonic jet fighter and the nuclear bomb, that a 1935-36 designed airplane that maybe does 160 wide open was still such a relevant piece of equipment. It just cracks me up. And that airplane's got plenty of fight left in it.
Well, look at it this way. With the advances in metallurgy and materials, I mean, if you keep working the airframe, I mean, look at the B-52. I mean, that thing will be flying and it's 100 years old.
Probably. It's going to be the first century airplane.
Good. You just keep, retrofitting the parts on the plane.
Well, the B-52, there's a joke that probably the only original part on most of those airplanes is the data plate.
Yeah.
But Basler takes the DC-3s. I've actually been up to, if you go to Oshkosh, they're up there. Basler is the company that takes the DC-3s and takes the skin off of them. I mean, they take them down to the actual ribs and stringers, clean it. They put a plug in front and rear to extend it. They make some modifications to it, and they basically build a new airplane using the bones of the old airplane. And they put those gigantic Pratt & Whitney PT 67 ends, I think, or 60, on them. And they make a whole new airplane out of it. And it can do insane stuff. But, a solid design is a solid design. By the way, I want to thank everybody that sent me the stuff on the... I actually had already seen it this morning on the Navy nose art. For those who didn't know, and I didn't know this either, and several of you guys have built this Hellcat and sent it to, it's been in viewers' builds. I didn't realize that even in World War II, the Navy had an official policy effectively banning nose art on fighter planes. And those Hellcats that had the cat's mouth on them, apparently the cat, in those days, the captain of an aircraft carrier, you're the captain of a ship, you were Lord and High Master. And the captain of that ship, he thought it was good for morale. The guys liked it, so he let it slide. But when that ship was sunk and they had to go to another ship, they had to paint over them that night. Apparently, some admiral, got his knickers in a wad and about it. And I mean, I get it, discipline, and the rules are rules, but it was a very successful squadron. I mean, they would allow you to paint a name or squadron logo or something, but actual nose art. Whereas the Air Force or the Air Corps / Air Force was completely different. They thought they knew it enhanced morale, and oh well, whatever. But that explains a lot, because I can just imagine what Marines would be painting on them if you let them get away with it. And personally, when they started letting them put nose art on fighters, but it basically had to be like black ink. It all had to be publicly approved and everything. I get it. Times change, but there, and some of the nose art was a little risque, but a lot of it was really, really cool too. And they said one of the advantages of nose art on airplanes in World War II, though, especially with the bomber formations, was everybody knew everyone in the squadron, so at a glimpse, you knew who was on your wing, and you knew, if something happened to somebody, you knew who it was right away just by a glimpse of the nose art. And of course, the P-40 without shark's teeth just looks banal. You got to have the shark's teeth. I didn't realize that I had heard that the Flying Tigers got the idea for the shark's mouth on the airplane from a picture they'd seen of a Royal Australian fighter that had one. But then it turns out that squadron, if you believe the interweb, actually got the idea from a picture they saw of a German Bf-110 twin-engine heavy fighter that had shark's mouths on each engine. And I don't know, he probably got the idea from somewhere else. But something about a radial engine airplane with a shark's mouth just doesn't do it for me. It's got to be an inline engine, give that correct anthropomorphic, or not anthropomorphic, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it looks right for the animal. A pointy-nosed fighter with a shark's mouth looks right. A radial engine airplane just doesn't work for me. Sorry, doesn't work for me. Inside of every old person is a teenager screaming, "What the hell happened?" Yeah, there's one in here right now, and you're talking to him. My late buddy Donovan, he goes, "I don't gotta get this old man's head on this young man's body." I look in the mirror and go, "Who's that jelly old fart?" So that actually dovetails nicely in the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is kind of why I did that bit on the kid with the outro in the intro. And Steve and I were talking about this earlier, and it's whatever happened to wonder. And I mean, I'm still impressed by some things. Obviously, as you get older, you get more experience, you're a little harder to impress. But even in young people, and maybe it's just me, but I always found great. Maybe it's when we grew up, space program, all that kind of stuff. Men going to the moon and the deep sea diving world records being. Everything was new, and we're going to have a Concorde, supersonic airliners, and kids your age are going to work on the moon, and you're going to fly supersonic jets and Star Trek and bright future. Everything was so much wonder to things. And I can remember that models were a fantastic, especially the sci-fi models, but even the old models. I mean, and if a new kit came out or a new box art, I had to see it until they started putting pictures of the finished models on the cover. Somehow they just never quite did it for me.
Well, the wonder was twofold.
Okay.
The wonder was, you walked into the store, and like your picture showed at the beginning, there was this vast array of boxes. Exactly. And then, as you rummaged through the boxes, there was the wonder of the art on the box, which reeled you in to buy that kit. And then when you built the kit and you finished it and you put it on the shelf, you were like, wow, I actually did that, and look at this.
I'm fantastic. I mean, and Mike's talked about this on occasion. You look over my shoulder, you see that C-119 flying through a green sky.
Right.
And that couldn't be more wrong. But man, it makes me want to be part of that universe. I'm like, that is so cool.
And it pulls you in like a magnet when you see it on the shelf.
And other things had wonder in them, and models. Oh my gosh. I was just watching, because the thing we did recently, I was watching a bunch of the old commercials. The Ideal Toy Company fighter cockpit, and I was just like, yeah, if I'd had that as a kid, you never would have gotten me out of that chair.
I had that when I was a kid.
But I didn't realize at the time, I'm not sure the government wasn't behind half these toys, because they were basically training us all to be Cold War warriors, but making it fun, so we're happy to do it.
And if you notice that commercial, which you referred to when you were watching it, the kid behind the cockpit had his Steve Canyon helmet on.
Mm-hmm. That's the next place it's going to go. You play with that thing until Steve Canyon came on. And, Steve Canyon, also known as the Air Force recruiting tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people watching right now join the Air Force because of Steve Canyon, or join the military because of movies and television? Because I guarantee you, I'm sure it had an influence on my desire to be in the military service. And although I'm not sure Gomer Pyle didn't work in reverse for the Marine Corps.
Or McHale's Navy for the Navy.
Are you kidding? Everybody wanted to be on PT-73, hang out with Gruber and Tinker.
And only if they were on that little island.
Yeah. And my God, I can still remember half the crew's name. There was Gruber, Tinker, Christie, Fuji, the POW that they didn't want to turn in. Ensign Parker, Quentin McHale, and it's just it's just. And you look at the show now, oh my God, this show is so stupid. And they had the season where they went to Italy.
Yeah. Yeah, picture sailing from the South Pacific to Italy on that PT boat.
Well, actually, when PT boats were moved, they were put on cargo ships and moved. Although there were times some of them had to do some open ocean, not full crossings, but they were coastal patrol boats. They were not made to get far from the beach. They didn't have that much range. A
lot of television shows gave you wonder in the old days.
Yes, they did. And I'm too young to remember like Fireball XL5, but I remember Stingray. I think one of my first memories of TV is Stingray. And I didn't know it until just the other night when I saw a documentary on YouTube. And I should have clipped that and added it here because it was really good. It was on Jerry Anderson Productions. Although it was aired in black and white in the UK, did you know that Stingray was the first color TV show made in the UK?
No, I did not.
That, according to this guy, it was. And he did a really good documentary on the making of the models and everything, their techniques of shooting and stuff. And
I remember when I was a kid, the show that had a lot of wonder for me was Man in Space.
Mm-hmm.
I love that show.
You talking about the Disney thing?
No, well, that one, but I'm talking about the one that was with William Lundigan.
Oh, okay.
Men into Space.
Okay.
That was a really good show, and it was fairly authentic, for the time.
Yeah. I think I know the one you're talking about. I've watched an episode or two, and I was like, this is actually fairly adult. What was that movie?
Yeah, well,
I was trying to tell my wife last night, we were talking about, she goes like, she was asking, like, what movies are, like, like the best of the, like, okay, she asked me, for example, and she goes, and you can't say the original because that's a given. What's the best Godzilla? And I said, Shin. Outside of the 1954 Godzilla, Shin. Which is exactly what she thought. And we started talking about movies that follow the same theme. And you and I have talked about this before. We had just seen, there's a movie coming out called The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Are you familiar with it?
No.
It's the ship that's taking Dracula to Transylvania.
Okay.
Basically, from what I can gather, it's essentially Alien or The Thing. They're stuck on a boat with a vampire. And it's gotten like 8 stars from the people that have seen it, like the pre-releases and everything. Apparently, it's really well done. And I said, okay, but that follows a theme that's fairly common of you're trapped with the monster. Aliens. And I used to say The Thing was the first one. But I think there might have been something actually before that came up with the concept of and by the way, there's another model that needs to be made. Somebody needs to make James Arness's version of The Thing. You'd sell those like hotcakes.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even be that hard to do.
No, it wouldn't, because it wasn't a lot to it.
It's just a guy in a jumpsuit with a bald head. Man, just don't know. I don't think there's probably some garage kit company that's made it. I can't believe nobody's made that kit. That's kind of like science fiction gold. Space Angel.
No, I remember Space Angel.
Space Angel. No, wrong one. Nosferatu. Well, Nosferatu, yeah, but Nosferatu was. You weren't like stuck on a boat with him. But let's see. There was The Thing, The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
What was that one? Did you say Vampire Planet, I guess, or Planet of the Vampires is kind of like that.
Planet of the Vampires.
That really should have been Planet of the Zombies, I think. Then there's Alien. Same general line. Aliens, same general gist. And there have been a couple of, the Green Slime. Yeah, they're all stuck on a space station with a green slime. Only the greatest sci-fi movie ever. I'm sure there are others that follow you're trapped in a space station or on a ship or in a submarine with the big bad, the inability to escape, because that doesn't horrify people. And
what about Deep Star 6?
I'm sure I've seen that and don't remember it.
They're stuck in a deep sea lab, and the creature gets into it.
Yeah. Oh, there's another one you and I were talking about, and it couldn't be more 50s that it tried, where there's a bunch of Americans on a spaceship, and they land on a planet, and some creature gets in with them.
It's the terror from beyond space.
Yes. And what I love about that, and then at one point they tried to use a bazooka on him.
Yeah, and they use handguns at it.
And I'm like, okay, only an American sci-fi movie made in the 50s is everybody slinging a .45 automatic, and they brought a bazooka. Because you never know when a bazooka will be handy on a spaceship, And I'm just like, that movie could not be more 1950s if it tried.
You never know what's going to happen.
You never do. Hey, Boy Scouts, be prepared. I'd rather have 40 pounds of Semtex, a bazooka, and a .45 than not, and then nothing happens, than not have it, and the big bad shows up. Oh, to a lesser extent, Forbidden Planet.
Yep. No, Kuda Killer just said, good concept, bad execution. Snakes on a plane.
Yeah. Well, I think that movie was a tongue in cheek,
Well, Bill Campbell's got the one, Event Horizon.
Yeah, that was a weird one, and it did have the creep factor going for it.
That was one of the scariest movies I ever saw. I saw that in the movies, and I was like, holy crap.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you the scary movie that was really funny, really scary, and really good all at the same time was An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
Well, when he's in the theater, his buddy keeps decomposing and coming to talk to him. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Every time he's a little more rotted than the last. And he meets his victims.
Done.
Yeah. I don't know if I saw all of Event Horizon or just part of it, but well, it's nice to know that despite everything we've been exposed to, we can still get the snot scared out of us.
Well, the other thing that brings you wonder, and it may not be in model kits or movies, is nature.
When you talk about nature, he says Gray Lady Down, where the enemy is really the ocean, like the Poseidon Adventure, or A Night to Remember. The big bad is the ocean.
Well, I'm talking about like standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon.
Oh yeah.
And you look at it and you go, this is spectacular.
And I keep looking over my shoulder to make sure nobody's behind me.
Yeah. Or standing at Lake Louise, looking up in the mountains, things of that nature are really, phenomenal. I like Gray Lady Down.
No, it's a good movie, and exactly the kind of crap that happens in the real world. Ships have run into submarines and stuff. It's happened. The fly melting the hand with the acid vomit. Yeah, that was bad. Crap! You had a thought and it got away from me. But
John Ashley's talking about American Werewolf in London, and he said the best movie of all time, if only for the soundtrack, which is true. But I remember watching a documentary, and they interviewed, Landis, and he said he made a big deal out of making sure that the transformation part was long and it looked painful.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said he didn't want it to just be like the old Lon Chaney, where it just kind of is
a series of fades,
and he turns into the wolf. He said he wanted it to show that it was actually, physically changing.
Yeah, they copied that in not Wolfen, but another one, another werewolf movie, the copied the technique. You see the face, but that one, American Werewolf in London pioneered it, and they showed how they did it and everything. Got the actors sitting through a hole in the floor with the stretch body below it, and how they did the stretch face, and it was really very impressive. A lot of work, a lot of effort. But the Brits, it's a British-made film, if I'm not mistaken, and they've always usually
The Howling.
Huh? The Howling, yeah.
The Howling.
The Howling, that was it. And the Brits have always been pretty good at practical effects, and if you don't count Gorgo, which I still love. I don't know why, I just do. I mean, it's a slow paced movie, but that's all. Probably because I saw it in the theater.
Can't beat those first two Quatermass movies.
Yeah, the Quatermass movies are good, and they had mystery to them, which is okay.
Did you ever see Horrors of the Black Museum?
No, I don't think so.
Michael Gough, who played Alfred in the Michael Keaton Batman movies, he always played a crazed individual scientist or person. He always played he was the scientist in Gorgo. I mean, in Conga, who made the gorilla.
Oh, yeah.
He always played the same role in the British movies. He was always like a bad guy head.
Well, with a face like that, you know.
Yeah.
Well, now you might recall, there was another Giant Ape movie. And the name flashed in my mind earlier, and I didn't latch it down. But they used the same gorilla suit from King Kong versus Godzilla, and it wasn't Konga, but it was Gago or Gogo or whatever it was. But I was watching the thing, and they said, you may recognize that suit as the same one they used from King Kong versus Godzilla, and they have made they have made some absolutely awful King Kong knockoffs, and it's like, guys, just please stop. Ape and a few of the others, but now Mighty Joe Young was okay. That's another the Triffids. That's another model they need to make. That movie, I realize people kind of laugh at it, but in King Kong Escapes, I think it was a different costume. You got to remember, I saw King Kong. That's another movie I was talking to my wife about. I saw King Kong Escapes at the theater as a kid. And when you see these movies as a little kid, they kind of hold a special place, even though you see them as an adult and you realize how bad they are. But I told her about the one scene that's one of my favorites in all the kaiju films. And that's where the tanks surround Kong, and I think it's Rhodes Reason was the out-of-work American actor that was playing the American. And he's telling them, don't shoot at him. He's not our enemy. It'll only make him mad and things will get worse. So they order the tanks not to shoot. And you see the hatch pop open on one of the tanks, and the tank commander just kind of come out and look like that. He gets the order not to shoot. He just slams the lid, and the tanks all back away at high speed. I'm like, that's what I would have done. Smart tanker. Mighty Joe Young was remade with, I think, Bill Paxton, and it's an okay movie. It took a different twist, and I, as much as I enjoyed Kong Skull Island, with, just Loki and Samuel L. Jackson, just for the effects and everything, I was thinking, Samuel L. Jackson's character has definitely gone around the bend, because the last thing I would be doing is going, looking for revenge against a 50-meter tall gorilla with nothing but small arms. And I have a beef with that movie. I've shared it before, but I'm going to share it again, just because it really irks me. You see these guys moving through the bush, and you see a fair bit of footage. They've all got their rucksacks. They've all got their weapons. Very much Vietnam foot patrol. Okay? Then he says, set up the machine gun, and all of a sudden they've got a 50 caliber. Now, I'm sorry, but a 50 cal, a barrel, a tripod, and ammo It takes about 6 guys to haul all that stuff, and it doesn't go in your rucksack. And don't tell me they pulled it off of one of the down helicopters because they had the tripod and everything, and that's not how helicopters were armed, and that is not how the guns were mounted. I was like, that is just no. There is no way that thing materialized out of nowhere. You would have had to have seen guys carrying that gear. I mean, the freaking receiver alone's got to weigh 60 plus pounds. I think a 50 cal empty with a tripod, I want to say it's 40, 40, and 25, so it's like 105 pounds. Anyway, that just kind of irked me. I was like, no, bad director. And one of the shows, like what is that real popular YouTube channel where they poke fun at movies? Honest is not Honest Trailer. Is it Honest Trailers? Anyway, they talk about, everybody complains about too many helicopters. There's only 4 or 5 helicopters on the deck. And the director of the movie actually made a cameo on their YouTube channel. He said, if you notice a flyby, there's more in the hangar. I'm like, nope, that doesn't fly, dude. Pardon the pun. There's only 3 more in that hangar, and each one of them had to be rolled out individually, cranked up, which takes time. There's no way they were in that formation. All right? Too many helicopters. And for Christ's sakes, guys, why are you flying so close? You've got force projection weapons. You've got machine guns and rockets. Shoot from a safe distance. But no, everybody's got to do their buzz run. This makes no sense. And they're blasting away with M60s and everything else. They're only scratching. But the minute he grabs one, he cuts his hand on a tail rotor, which would be the first thing to separate. This is when knowing too much about aircraft becomes a problem. MST 3000. I'm gonna when they start MST 4000, I want to be the host, so I just want to be that annoying guy that pokes all the holes. No, grumpy old man.
We should make our own channel.
Why not? Well, I think that's kind of what this is.
That'd be just like sitting in the theater with your friends when you're a teenager. You do that all the time. What are you kidding me?
And time to refill my margarita cough medicine here. In honor of Jimmy. So, all right, guys. 84 pounds and 44 for the tripod. Ha! So 128 pounds. Told you it was heavy. Guess who had to carry one in the Army? Not very far. We just had to load them on the trucks. I'm like, oh, I didn't see him do this in the war movies. So, well, that brings up an interesting question. Now that a lot more of these kaiju movies and stuff, and a lot of more horror movies and things have come out, there's got to be some opportunities. There's got to be some kit model opportunities. So what are we overlooking? I haven't seen a kit model of the new King Kong or the new Godzilla, just dolls and figures. I haven't seen a kit of the Shin Godzilla. I haven't seen there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, gosh, they invented a whole bunch of new Titans for the movie, so there's kit model opportunities. If you guys, now I know some of you guys do cars and some guys do planes and some do figures, but counting everything, including the ships and the aircraft, all that stuff, and it doesn't have to be a kaiju movie. Any movie that's come out lately, Top Gun, Maverick, any of them. What kit's out there? Well, they did make Maverick's F-18. Why they haven't remarketed an F-14 in the foreign markings as the aggressor airplane or the Freelon? I think, well, here's a Top Gun marketing opportunity. But what kits would you guys like to see the manufacturers make that they're not that are not out there, or in a scale? Maybe they made the kit, but you think it's the wrong scale. And there's got to be the Zanti Misfit Ants. And there's one. Pacific Rim. Absolutely. That is a great idea, Dario. Lemur crazy. I didn't even think about Pacific Rim. Shame on me.
Now, they have Pacific Rim figures, but they didn't make kits.
No Dark Star. Dark Star would be so easy to do too. It's not that much to it. Ford class carrier. Okay. Mannix's CUDA. There you go. Now we're cooking with gas. Well, if you're nervous, you can count your toes. My favorite line of any sergeant in any movie, and I think you guys will recognize the movie when I say the line. Lighten up, Francis.
Stripes.
Stripes.
I say that to my son all the time when he gets crazy.
And we should think of Sergeant Holka as our big toe. You best straighten up or Sergeant Holka's going to see how far he can shove his big toe up your ass. Darth. Yeah, that's true, Darth. Mulder's rental sedan? Yeah, I don't know. You might be able to find that. Whoops.
A Winnebago from Spaceballs.
Oh, yeah. I see all these could be kids. The movies give us so much opportunity. They're already part of the pop culture, so they're kind of pre-advertised.
The Bluesmobile.
Yeah. There is an aftermarket set of decals to Rogue Nation F-14. I figured I would be hurt if they didn't. Sergeant Holka. Our big toe. It's like going in and out of Wisconsin. I got my ass kicked in Wisconsin once. Oh, the Rocinante from The Expanse. I think I've seen some garage kits, but I haven't seen an actual, like from Bondi or something. You'd think Bondi would be all over these things. There's much stuff. They're always looking for new stuff to put out.
68 Charger RT from Bullet. They did make a metal kit of that. Revell sold it.
I never quite. I built one of those metal kits. I didn't get it. It was just. It seemed like totally a marketing thing because other than giving the model some weight.
Well, because all you did was you basically assembled it.
I know the one I had plastic parts in it. I had to be glued together. Had to use CA glue to get the metal to it here.
Yeah, but it was all like molded in color, so you know,
not
mine. Wasn't a lot to it.
No, mine was bare metal. It was a T-Bird, 50-something T-Bird.
Well, that's not a Bullet.
No, not from Bullet. I'm talking about from. I built one of Monogram's metal kits that makes media things.
Those yeah, okay. They had a 56 T-Bird, and they did a Jaguar XK 120.
And the thing that you see, since kids love, and of course there's countless stuff out of Star Wars ships and everything, and now there's a new E-wing or something, and a whole bunch of others. I think one of the things that would be I understand people don't build models like they used to, but still, you know, I was talking about what happened to the Wonder, and here's all these opportunities to bring all these wonderful things back. Right now, the shell should be festooned with the Elon Starship and all the stuff that's actually flying. And in a way, I guess one of the problems is that all this stuff was inspirational when we were young because everything was new. But now, Elon's putting up so many rockets, it's like watching a plane blast off of Pittsburgh. Well, not for me. Every one of them's magical. I actually, a couple of times, have managed to catch the things going up in the evening while flying and see them. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's just awe-inspiring. It does not get old. And you see people on their phones, and they're like, dude, look. Like, no, that's nice. I'm like, I should strangle the life out of you just for general purpose. How can you look at a rocket blasting off into space and be more interested in Angry Birds? We're doomed. But, like I say, where's the wonder? Of course, in fairness to kids, I'm talking about anybody under 30. They have been exposed to so much so fast. It's like they don't get a chance to sit down and digest what they're seeing. So just sit back and go, wow. I don't know. I feel sorry for people who can't find the wow in something. Well, let's see. Okay, back to models. So I learned a little something today, which we all know. I should say I relearned it. Yesterday I was gluing the tail on the horizontal stabilizer onto one of the Douglas World Cruisers. And since I had airbrushed everything was covered in paint. And I know you're supposed to scrape the paint off so you have plastic on plastic, but I figured I'm using the thick Tamiya glue. This'll burn through the paint. So I put a reasonably generous amount, make sure I got a good mounting on there, slid the tail on, gave it overnight to harden. Came up today, saw it looked like it might be a little crooked, was just going to give it a little touch, and it just popped right off of my hand. There was dried glue, and it had not burned through the paint. And this was acrylic. So apparently, I hadn't stopped to think about it, but acrylics and enamels, they dissolve based on different stuff. If they've been enamel paint, it might have, but if you don't get and I know this is model building 101, but if you don't scrape that paint off and get a plastic on plastic bond, you're running a substantial risk of not getting any bond at all. I was really shocked at just how much glue I used and how little effect it had. The paint it's almost like when I put the glue on it, it became the shield to protect the paint as it hardened to prevent plastic on plastic melting, which is, of course, what we need to get the bond. So long, Chili Billy. Glad you made it. Okay, well, hope you're not on fire. So that makes me wonder, because sometimes, like when I use that real thin Tamiya, I touch it and it takes the paint off. I mean, I'll put a little dab on and it just takes the paint right off. But then I use this thick stuff and it doesn't burn through at all. So it makes me wonder what the story is on that. Steve, are you typing?
I'm sorry, I was answering some.
Oh, okay. I figured you might be.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I'm just wondering why I can use that Tamiya thin and drop it on, just put a little dab on something, and it eats the acrylic paint right off of it as it goes in. But I use that thick stuff, and it not only does the plastic. I thought I didn't scrape the paint off before I put the glue on. I figured it would burn through the paint into the plastic, and it didn't. It's almost like it formed the thick stuff, almost like it formed a shield over it, because there was no bond, even after it hardened. And I'm just thinking, I know you're supposed to scrape the paint off to get plastic on plastic, but it just made me wonder what am I doing here that these paints obviously, these glues obviously have some somewhat different characteristics, and.
Yeah, it's just a chemistry issue. I mean, there's something in one that doesn't interact with the other, and then it just takes it out on the paint.
Which, if you got the time to let it dry, I found that white glue actually does a better job than I expected on bonding stuff that often doesn't want to burn. And I'm not sure I don't know if the white glue, if it just because it hardens around it, and just puts a physical grab on it. But yeah, it's meant for plastic to plastic. I really thought, and in fairness, I did put several coats of acrylic on there, so there was a generous thickness there, and it was acrylic on acrylic. But I figured as much glue as I put on there, that'll burn through. Let that be a lesson. It will not necessarily burn through. Take the extra time to go ahead and scrape off the area and make sure you've got a. I've actually got a point when I airbrush now. If I can, I cover up the mating areas for just that reason. MEK, well, that'll burn through anything. I'm pretty sure MEK could glue steel together.
It's, every time we build a kit, at some point during the process, it's a learning process.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're always learning something different, that this worked, this didn't work, this won't work, this is why this works. It's amazing. I mean, you never just get through a kit where it goes together, the glue works, the paint works, and ta-da, there it is. It's always a quirk in there somewhere.
I was putting landing gear on it today, and one of the problems with these Williams kits, especially in 1/72nd scale, is everything's got flash on it. I'm sure it's just because they're old molds, and you frequently have to use the pin vise to drill out holes, because virtually none of the larger ones, like the wing struts, fit okay, but a lot of the holes with the pins that go in, the holes are never big enough, or they're filled in with plastic. And I'm sure it's just because the molds are old, but it's and the floats on these things, are the mounts for the floats are pretty complicated. So the first one I'm working on is going on its wheels. It's actually pretty straightforward, and but the one thing I was able to do is to leave enough room on the struts where they go into the wings to should be able to get the easy line in there and tie it off. There's when those struts go into the wings, they have the little pin that goes in the hole, and you have to trim it down to sit flush. And I'm just trimming enough that it almost sits flush, but not quite. Of course, in 1/72nd scale, you're dealing with some pretty fine tolerances. I think I'm doing it. I'll know when I go to use the easy line. I actually got hardening over there right now. And, biplanes. They're such a joy. But they look so good when they're done.
Yes, they do. Yeah, there's something, I'm not going to say wonder, but there's something romantic about a biplane that's all strung up and it's all painted up. You know, it just looks right.
There's an old world charm and elegance to them that it's like it. And again, to paraphrase Sideshow Bob, it's sort of a gentleman's affair. And of course, when you start getting into the sleeker airplanes, one of the things you lose is the how can I put it, at a biplane, you've got an open cockpit, you're not going that fast, you're sort of one with the sky, so to speak. You know, you start putting retractable gears, cantilever wings, sliding canopies, going 300 miles an hour. Now you don't just stick your hand out and wave at the folks below. You know, it's now you're more separated from the contact with the air, more protected from it. Now the air is more of a thing to be pushed out of the way, you know, as opposed to enjoy being part of. You're not so much a part of the sky as you are burning a hole through it. And I guess you might say you lose the personal touch. That's what I'm saying. And good Lord, you know, I when I saw the picture of Blériot in the airplane, the first man to fly across the English Channel, and it kind of looked like what we think of as an airplane. I was thinking, what's the big deal? He flew across the English Channel. It's only like 23 miles. And then I got a good close look at a replica Blériot, and I was like, oh, now I get it. You've got enough stuff. You've probably got better components in your garage to make an airplane with.
Well, you know, it's amazing. You talk about that, you know, oh, it's only 23 miles, and then you look at what they had to do it with. And then you look at the western part of the country, you look at South America, you look at Europe, and you say to yourself, people actually settled these lands and left with a horse and a wagon and whatever they could put in the wagon and on their back, you know, maybe a barrel of water and some food, and they had to find food along their way. And there were no roads, and they had to deal with mountains and rivers and all this stuff. And you said, you know, that's really a wonder that these people settled all of these places in the world, because they were true pioneers.
Well, you know, the first thing you did, if you wanted your town to flourish, was you set up a general store, a saloon, and then a hobby shop.
Yeah, right.
I remember when RCs were like, diodes, and you had to, and some guys built their own electrical units. I mean, you had to learn about how all this stuff actually worked. And, of course, every airplane was cut out of wood, and doped and fabricked and everything. So when one of them went in the tree, I remember being about 8 years old the first time I saw a guy put a RC into the trees. And he went, I hear grown men climbing after this thing. And because it had like $300 worth of components in it, in like 1969. So that's, Ken may be with us. Stand by, I'm going to merge him in. Okay. All right, merge. Hey, Ken.
Hello.
Hey, everybody. Captain Ken is with us.
Good evening.
Hey, you picked the right time. We were just talking about RCs in the late 60s and early 70s. How you had to know a lot more about gadgetry and how to build stuff than you do today, because nothing was, ARFed or PNP. It was all, build it on your desk, figure out where to put the servos, balancing your own ailerons.
Oh, exactly. And covering it. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nobody made a plane for you back then. You had to make your own.
And,
it was a lot of work.
And when it bit the dust, a little piece of your soul died.
It did. It did. The last one I built out of the boss, I still have. It's that MiG-29 with the electric engine in it. That took me 4 months. That took me 4 months to make.
And you've flown it, what, 6 times?
6 times? What do you mean 6 times?
The MiG?
Yeah, the MiG-29.
How many times have you flown that thing?
Oh, probably, I don't know, 10, 15 times.
Okay. Because I know there's not that many places to fly it, but, I miss the days when the open field was an RC field.
Yeah. It was balsa wood, monocoque, and plywood.
Did you get your RC work? Did you get RC? Ha! I got airplanes on the break. Did you get your AC working?
I don't know. I can't test it. I put it back together. I'm not crazy about how it went back together, but it's back.
What, you couldn't just turn it on?
I think I might have a little bit of a leak, and I could not. Oh God, I could not get the fitting into the through hull hose. It just wouldn't go in the hose. I had to cut the thing off to get it off in the first place. So when I put it back into the hose, it was like it's about 3/4 of the way in there.
Ah, the joys of boat ownership. Are you enjoying yourself, Ken?
Oh, I am sore everywhere.
For those that didn't know, the air conditioner on Ken's sailboat went out, and like I said, in Florida, that is a required equipment for dispatch.
Yeah, pretty important. Yeah, and I wanted to hook it up to the inverter and run it off the batteries. It's got some rather large batteries in the boat, but unfortunately, that was not quite so simple to do. So we have to tie up someplace and plug them in to get them to work.
Well, guys, I think we have finished the regular live stream. We talked about models as far as we went with it. Wanted to talk about the gunships and stuff, the history of them, and the kits that were available, and another potentially.
Did you get a chance to talk about Maynard Hill?
No. Well, in fact, that's a great thing to talk. Let me go get a picture of him, and Ken, I'll go look for a picture of Maynard, and why don't you introduce the folks to who Maynard was?
Okay. Maynard Hill, quite the interesting individual. He, let's see, I think he died about 2013.
2011.
2011? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he's 85.
He set so many world records in the RC field. I don't even know all of them. I know that he set distance records, altitude records. He even his final accomplishment, I guess you'd say, is that he built an aircraft that flew autonomously all the way across the North Atlantic and landed in Ireland almost 2 days later. 38 hours and some minutes later, to be exact.
This was an RC that did this, or not even an RC. It was like you said, it was a model airplane with about a 2-meter wingspan, but it was autonomous.
Yeah, well, they used RC to launch it and to take it up to altitude, and then they switched on the autopilot, and it just headed out across the Atlantic. It took them 5 tries before they actually succeeded, and he had some very interesting friends. This was back in 2009 or 6 or something like that, he tried doing this. He could have used GPS, but he developed his own autopilot, and he actually used the Earth's magnetic field for to right the aircraft. Very interesting person. Very intelligent.
How big was this plane?
It was about 6 feet, weighed 11 pounds. Used a gas-powered.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a picture of it coming up here in just a second.
Gas-powered OS-61 4-stroke.
It held enough fuel to make it that distance?
Did it on less than a gallon.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. This guy fine-tuned this engine. By using gasoline, the fuel was a lot more energy-rich than using alcohol, which was very common. It still is very common in radio-controlled piston engines. But he'd set distance records before. I don't remember the year, but it was probably late 70s, early 80s. He decided he was going to set a distance record. And this was back when the speed limit was still 55. And the plane that he had created for this distance record that he wanted to set actually flew at 61 miles an hour. So they actually got permission from the state of Virginia to exceed the speed limit all the way down Route 66. And he sat in the back of a convertible Cadillac with his buddies. They drove the car, and he had a huge battery attached to his transmitter, and he was flying the plane in the back of the car. And they decided that the car needed gas. The airplane was fine. And they pulled into a gas station, and they pulled up underneath a roof, and he couldn't see the airplane anymore, so he had to grab the battery and the transmitter, and he jumped out of the car, and went out to where he could see the airplane, and he circled the airplane around the gas station while they were filling it up. But he set the record. The FIA people?
FAI.
Yeah, FAI people were there, and he still had a bunch of fuel left in the plane. He could have gone a whole lot further, but the way it works, you have to go from point A to point B to set the record.
Yeah,
He's a really
ad
nice
hocking it.
guy. What?
No ad hoc stuff.
Yeah, he worked for Jet Propulsion, not JP. Was it JPO?
Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
But it was in Virginia. Maybe it wasn't JPL. But he worked for a government agency that he developed some very interesting radio control airplanes for. I remember he brought a big Delta wing up to the airfield one day, and he was test flying it around. And after he was done with it, he came over and started talking to us, and we said, "What's that airplane for?" He said, "Oh, that's for the Marines. They're going to put a guidance. That's a scaled down model of it. They're going to put a guidance system in it that seeks out tanks, and when it finds one, it dives on it and blows it up. It just goes up and circles around until it finds a tank of the right signature and dives on it and blows it up." Okay, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, TAM-5 is the one that made it across the ocean.
Yes, TAM. I forget what TAM stands for. It's an acronym for something. He built all these airplanes. Him and a friend of his built these planes. He designed them and built them by hand. These are custom designed aircraft.
Yeah, there's a picture of him here working in his workshop. Well, it's not like you go down to the record-setting, model airplane office and buy parts.
No, and he's a really nice guy too. After he was done flying his plane, he would come over and he'd help some kid that didn't know how to start his engine, and he'd help him get the engine running, take it up and fly it around for him, test it out. He was just an overall really nice guy.
He was certainly a talented one.
Go ahead.
I just said he's certainly a talented one.
Very, very talented. He also set the altitude record, which still stands today. He there's a picture out on the internet somewhere. Somebody got a anti-aircraft gun mount and put 2 huge pairs of binoculars on these things. And he sat where they took the gun out, put the binoculars in. He sat where the gun was, and somebody else sat down where the guy who aimed the gun, because he had his own pair of binoculars, and they had it pointed almost straight up. And he used binoculars to see the plane because they didn't have that PV back then. And there was also little metal aluminum shards in the wing, and they had a ground radar that they could tell to the inch exactly how high that airplane was. Also had some very connected friends. It's interesting hardware. And they flew that thing to just shy of 30,000 feet. He said they could have gone higher, but they couldn't see the plane.
Yeah.
How did they track this thing when he went from Newfoundland?
I just found the picture. I'm going to post it here in a second.
He actually got tracking satellites. I don't know how he did it, who he talked to, or who owned the satellites, but there were satellites that would transmit telemetry, location, speed, altitude, RPM, up to the satellite, and then back down to his headquarters in Canada. And they would monitor the aircraft's progress across the Atlantic that way.
In a little bit, you're going to see the picture of Maynard laying on his back in what looks like a bloody ejection seat with that gargantuan binocular aimed up. We're running about a 20-second lag here, so it'll be a moment before you see
there
it.
he is. Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Looks like a piece of government equipment.
Surplus.
Yeah, that's him setting the altitude record. And there's the radar dish right behind him, measuring its altitude. Yeah, he definitely had some friends with some interesting equipment.
Boys and their toys.
Yeah. Still
By the way, I did not mean that.
airplane.
I did not mean for that to sound like a bad thing.
It sounds like
The airplane
something
that-
a wife would say.
Okay. The airplane that did that, set the altitude record, is in the AMA, American Modeling Academy Museum in Muncie, Indiana. It used to be in,
that's him posing with it in the upper right. I think. No, that's TAM 5.
No, that's not it. Yeah, that's TAM 5. It used to be in Roslyn, Virginia. Actually, just a few blocks down the street from where I used to work. I went down, and that's where I first saw the airplane, was in that museum in Roslyn.
Well, Nathan asked a question. He said, so is he basically the grandfather of the modern Air Force drone program?
No,
I don't know.
No, those are actually different technologies. But he did advance autonomous aviation. So there's some overlap. But Maynard did everything on an unbelievably tight budget. I mean,
and he lived in a modest home in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Maynard was one of those people who, I mean, I didn't know the guy like especially Ken did, but he seems like one of those people who had not only a lot of intellect but a genuine passion, and I dare I say, Ken, a little bit of should I say boyish innocence.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of the good ones. It's a shame because he really advanced the hobby. He back in his early days, the Russians came over with their model airplanes, and they were pretty rough. They even had to make their own propellers. They carved their own wooden propellers.
Chuck says you can find a model plane that's got less than a 10-foot wingspan, but you can't find the 777.
Well, Maynard didn't design that one.
That's true.
But he lost a bunch of them trying.
I'm sure he did. You know.
Ken,
Yeah,
you want to tell him?
yeah, the fifth one made
You
it.
want to tell him what happened in Ireland when the plane showed before the plane showed up?
Well, this was he attempted this over 2 years. The first year he was unsuccessful. The second year, obviously, was. But on the fifth flight, one of the satellites flew over where they thought the airplane would be, and they didn't get any telemetry back. They thought they had lost the airplane, and the people in Ireland lived like about 3 or 4 hours drive away from where the airplane was going to land, and they had called them up and told them that they thought the airplane was going to be there because it was progressing further than the others had. It got this last position was fairly close, so they jumped in their car and they started driving up there, and then they didn't get the telemetry and they thought the plane had crashed. So they called them up and said, "No, forget it. It didn't make it." And then a little while later, when another satellite went over, they did get telemetry, and they had called the people back and said, "No, go back. The plane's coming. Go." So they turned back around, and apparently quite a few people know because there's a video on YouTube about when the plane showed up. It's in an old camcorder format and color and everything that goes along with that, because that's how long ago this was done. And the plane came over right within a minute or so of when it was supposed to. Guy was standing there with his radio control, and he turned on his radio on the frequency and turned off the throttle, which turned off the guidance systems on the airplane, and he was able to take control over, and he flew it back all the way onto the ground.
He was, according to this, I just stumbled on something, September 6, 1970, so this is 2 days after my 9th birthday. Maynard Hill, the Lindbergh of model planes, boosts his catbird to 8,205 meters. Is that the one you were talking about? Because that's pretty close. That's 3 times 8 is, what, 24?
24.
Yeah, that's about 25,000 feet.
No, he made it higher than that. Just a few feet shy of 30,000.
That's 1970.
Yeah. I mean, he set hundreds of records, and his son set quite a few of his own too. They were both very active in the hobby. They would set circuit course records. They would take turns, and they would fly for hours and hours and hours on the circuit, setting distance and time records.
Here it says, in 2003, while the world celebrated the centennial of the Wright brothers' first flight at Kill Devil Hill, Maynard Hill traveled to the coast of Newfoundland, Canada to launch a flight of his own at age 77 and legally blind. He launched an 11-pound model airplane for an epic 38-hour, 1,900-mile transatlantic flight to Ireland. Okay. You have got, if you are not impressed by that, then I feel sorry. Then you have no wonder. You see, Ken, this dovetails with what I was talking about earlier, before you were able to join us, which was, where has the wonder gone? I feel sorry for people who don't experience wonder at things. And Maynard, the fact that he can make a 6-foot wingspan airplane that could fly the North Atlantic autonomously, that kind of thing fills me with wonder. I wish I'd gotten to meet him.
And Ken, wonder, like when you can't get the fitting off of the hose on the air conditioner.
There you go. You are no Maynard Hill, Ken.
Please. I don't want to go into that right now.
Hey, if you can't needle your friends, why let them keep breathing?
I tell you, sometimes I think, why did I buy this boat?
Now you're a boat owner.
It was just predestined, Ken.
It seemed like a good idea at the time. No. No,
You know, Ken, I
sure.
can't at this point. At this point, I can't even bring myself to pick on you.
I've had that statement rattle around in my head numerous times over the years. Yeah.
The only people who've never said it seemed like a good idea at the time are people who've never done anything ever.
True. Yeah. Okay, somebody mentioned earlier that could you put like a 22 rifle or gun or something like that on a radio control airplane and shoot at other planes?
That's actually against the law. But yes, you can do it.
No, the boat owns Kent. Yes, it definitely does. It is my master. If it needs something, I'm there to take care of it. Too much Jimmy Buffett. Oh, yeah, I heard he died today. That's such a shame.
Yeah,
He went to the big Margaritaville in the sky.
Well, Ken, that's why tonight's celebratory drink is the margarita.
Nathan says, "Wow, Ken's a quick learner. It usually takes years and tens of thousands of dollars for people to come to the conclusion of why did I buy this stupid boat."
Ken's wife is saying, "I told you so."
No, she's not.
There.
She's just sitting over there with a sinister grin, smiling and watching you squirm.
She's getting to that point. Yeah.
Yeah, the payback on this is going to be really tough.
Just remember, Ken, when you do get everything fixed and everything's working, we're still never going to let you forget. Okay, Steve, another model thing here, just to give people, next week there won't be a live stream because I will be at my sister's wedding, birthday wedding. God, I'm so used to going to weddings. This one's a birthday. So I thought just very briefly, without giving too much away, I'd show a little of the picture of what Jim has done on his Phaeton, and you can sort of prime things for the show 2 weeks from now.
Sure. You want me to narrate the photos of Jim's?
I'm just popping this one up. I don't want to give too much away. Just you can sort of tell them what this is, what's going on, what we got planned.
This was a kit that Jim Kiora is currently working on, which was a Plymouth Prowler. And Jim got the idea that it would look great as a Phaeton, which is a four-seater, extended style of car, which the term was coined back in the 20s. So what Jim did was he heavily modified the Prowler body. If you look at the back part of the Phaeton, that's actually the trunk section sawed off and turned upside down and fared into the body. He took the six-cylinder engine and, as he put it, threw it in the trash. And he's put a Chrysler Hemi in there. He's changed the front suspension, and he's changed the front opening, and he's putting the grill from a 40 Ford in there. And do you have any other pictures, Max, or is this the only picture?
No, I got others. Let me see if I've got one of the more recent ones here. Give me a minute. You go ahead and talk about it, and I'll see if I can...
The motor is going to be supercharged, and the blower will be sticking through the hood. And he's going to paint it a green color when he finally finishes all the body work. And it's going to be quite an interesting kit when you figure what it came from.
Okay, here's one that's...
I saw this picture a few weeks ago, Steve. Has he done any more on it since then?
Yeah, he has. I'm getting something a little more up to date here. off of his Facebook page.
Thought I sent you pictures.
You
New York
did,
Jet Green.
let me,
No, probably not New York Jet Green.
okay, there it is. Hold on.
Yes, Mike Frady. That is my book.
Okay.
You'll see a new picture in a few seconds. Let me see if I think he said he broke the grill or something and had to get another one.
Yeah, I'm talking to Max.
There we go. There's the engine with supercharger. It's a Chrysler Hemi.
Oh, wow.
Fittingly for a, sort of a Plymouth Prowler. And it's coming along really nicely. It'll have headers that'll come out the side, which is why the side panel is notched out there. It's coming along. He'll have more pictures next week or in 2 weeks. It'll probably be finished. And he'll have a bunch of pictures showing other levels in construction. And Jim will be on, and he'll be discussing this and his handmade Spirit of America Sonic 1 model that he made by hand from a piece of wood. And a variety of other things he'll be talking about, and one of which will be when I was on vacation last week, I was out in Park City, Utah, and I was invited to go to the National Car Model Kit Museum, which is quite a place. And I took a lot of pictures, which I sent to Max. And Jim is a card-carrying member of the museum and one of the founders, and has many of his works in the museum. And Jim will be commenting and discussing things that are in the museum, which is like the history of the car model kit industry. It's quite the place.
Well, he worked for Revell for a long time. He actually was hired by
Glazer.
By his wife,
Royal
Glazer, and
Royal Glazer.
I found a picture of him with the.
Bill Campbell says if it's a Prowler, it should be bright lemon yellow.
There he is with his. You'll see it in a bit here with the Spirit of America that he's working on, and Jim is unstoppable. What is he? 85 now, and he's going like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, he's 83.
83. Sorry, didn't want to age him.
Yeah, he carved that Spirit of America out of a single piece of wood, and the scoop in the front he made out of dental plastic. And when you look inside the scoop, you can see the turbine blades of the jet engine. And he'll have other pictures that will show the back of the engine with all the little fins and everything. And he's waiting for decals that he's having made for it. And he'll be painting the white on it and putting the decals on. And at some point, he hopes to take a resin mold of that and have kits made of it.
Yeah, you're talking about somebody who at one point was entering the Fisher Body competition, so the Craftsman's Guild.
Yes.
Ugly story behind all that, but
Jim is responsible for putting Revell solidly in the car kit business in the late 50s and into the mid 60s. Jim did all the Ed Roth cars. As a matter of fact, Jim lived with Ed Roth for about 6 months when he moved from San Diego to Los Angeles when he went to work for Revell. He was personal friends with him and is still personal friends with his wife. Jim did the Slant 6 engine. He did the Chrysler cars that they brought to market. He did all of the Mickey Thompson cars, as well as a variety of other kits that weren't cars, but he was the one that got them into the car business in a big way. He was responsible for the parts packs. He's sort of a legend in the kid industry, and then he went to work at Aurora.
I'm going to be back in about...
At Aurora for many years. As a matter of fact, Andy Yankus, who we talk about all the time, Andy worked for Jim.
I'm going to be back in about 1 minute. I have to leave the desk for just a second. But why don't you real quick give him the rundown on his little escapade with Diker, how he got his job at Aurora.
Okay. Well, Jim had left Revell, and he had moved to Utah. And he was married, and his wife was... He was in college, and his wife was having their first baby. And in the middle of the night, she had a craving, and so he went down to the local convenience store, which was open, to get her what she had requested, and saw a bunch of Revell kids. A bunch of Aurora kids, and he thought they were just the most horrible things he'd ever seen in his life. And so the next day, he got up and he started doing a little research, and he found out who the president of Aurora was at the time, and it was Charles Diker. And he called up the switchboard at Aurora and said, "This is Jim Keeler." And he said, "I want to talk to Chuck." And they said, "Oh, he's not in the office, but if you call back later, he should be back." And he called back later, and he got a hold of Diker. Diker picked up the phone, and he said, "Hi, I'm Jim Keeler." And he goes, "I was the product director over at Revell." And he said, "I just went into a store that had your kids." And he goes, "And your kids really suck." And Diker was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And Jim explained to him. And so Diker said, "Hold on." He put Jim on hold. He came back, and he said to Jim, it was Monday, he said, "We're going to send you a plane ticket, and we want to fly you to New York, and we want you to come to our offices on Thursday, and we want to have a meeting with you." And so Jim, who was in college at the time, had to go out and buy a suit and, fancy shoes and, a tie and the whole 9 yards. He flew from Salt Lake to New York. They picked him up. He met with them for 2 days. And they hired him right on the spot and paid him a retainer every month while he was still finishing college. And then when he finished college, they relocated him to Long Island to work as the director of product development at Aurora. And he was just... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, that was very much a different time.
A very different time. You couldn't do that today.
But
they wouldn't even talk to you. I mean,
even as much as we complain about Diker, at least he was a guy in an office who was running things and made decisions, even if they weren't good decisions. But I think one of the reasons that Jim, and I'll probably talk to Jim about this in some detail when we have him, I think one of the reasons that Diker had stopped all kit model development.
Yes.
And
because he thought they were going to be a game company. He wanted them to be a game company.
But Jim came along at the right time to sort of, quite frankly, kind of lay down the reality to him, and I think he responded to that.
Well, Jim was there before it got to that point. Because I think Jim was there before they got Skittle Bowl.
Oh, okay.
And when they got Skittle Bowl, it was sort of a one-trick pony, but they thought, and they hit a home run with it.
They thought it was the future.
That was going to be the future. Let's expand on this.
Which is why you open a separate division. You don't close down stuff that's still turning a profit.
Well, they diverted the money from model kits to make all of these different games. And they weren't, that successful. And then they decided that they were going to shut down the model kit business entirely and divert all that money into games. And that's pretty much what killed Aurora.
Yeah.
But, the smart thing would have been, okay, you're not going to turn around and continue this. Let's sell off the division.
Yeah.
Because you did have some value in the molds. I mean, there's still molds out there that are cranking out kits that they made in the 70s.
Yeah, Atlantis is popping a few of them.
Yeah, Atlantis has got a bunch of them. So, I mean, to just shut that off, cold turkey and just kind of let it sit there, and then the company goes out of business, without selling it off was just a bad business decision.
Yep. Oops. That's putting it mildly. When you created a company, I think we're beyond bad business decision.
Well, I mean, just look at what they sold in Universal Monsters. I mean, Universal Monsters could have been a separate company on its own.
Mm-hmm.
The business they did in that stuff was insane. And Aurora was they were known as the, if there was something on television that was hot, they popped a kit out in no time. I mean, it wasn't the most accurate kit, but it took,
There's value in being the first to market.
I mean, they had the first TV Batmobile kit.
Their bat plane, which is something they just made up from whole cloth because there never actually was a bat plane that we saw in those days. Their bat plane not only sold well, but it now, I think I saw somebody on eBay with one, and I know it's being repopped by Atlantis, for $20, or whatever you'd expect, but good God, the original, some guy wants like $2,500 for one still in the box. And I'm like, yeah, but it takes time for that kind, because there's a lot of old stuff that's dirt cheap because still nobody wants it.
Right.
But it's like those old, was it Imai that made the knockoff Star Wars stuff but gave it different names? And
yes.
And I was like, they're horrible looking kits. I wouldn't want one, but good God, they start at $300.
Yeah. Well, look at that Tamiya, those space kits that Tamiya made, those little tractor things.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't ever remember seeing those anywhere.
That was, I think they call it Apollo 1. I think it was what they...
Yeah, and they go for like $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
Which is insane. But,
It is more of a toy.
they were the first one. They had the Black Beauty from the Green Hornet.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was 32nd scale. They had the Seaview. They had the Spindrift from Land of the Giants.
Well,
you
remember the two cars that Andy and his crew made for the Green Hornet, for the car rotation, the garage scene, the 110 scale, 110 scale, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that was, what, 66, 65?
66.
Okay. So we're talking almost 60 years ago, 57 years ago. Now you and I both know that there's a very real possibility that once they were done filming, some prop master or director or somebody working the studio said, "Hey, I'll put these away," and they went to his house.
Absolutely.
He's probably since passed, possibly. And it's distinctly possible that those two magnificent, from a model perspective, historic models are sitting somewhere caked in dust and say, "Oh, those are grandpa's or whatever. I don't know. We were going to throw them away, but, And I'm like,
I don't think so. I think if somebody has they're in a case someplace.
I hope so. Because you heard about the suspicions on the 3-foot Enterprise, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. What is that in the background? And I mean, the guys actually, for those who don't know, there was a photograph of a model of the Enterprise that was being made for one of the movies, one of the smaller models, like a 4-footer or whatever, for one of the later movies. And in the background, there's the TOS Enterprise. Everybody thought, oh, it's just an AMT kit. But it was sitting on top of a Xerox machine. And some sharp-eyed individual realized that ain't no AMT kit, because that Xerox machine's is bigger than that. And they actually went and found the Xerox machine and measured it and determined that model was probably about 3 feet, which means it was probably one of the missing, 3-footers. And, Star Trek mysteries, and model mysteries. And I realized outside of kit model world and movie memorabilia world, this is like the most unimportant thing in the world. But to model geeks, it's like, wait a minute, this is one of the holy grails, man. This is the Ark of the Covenant. Where's the missing Enterprise? Where's the missing, Klingon battlecruiser? That sort of thing. the world must know.
Well, to make it even odder is, round two, they repopped the Aurora Black Beauty from the TV show, the 30-second scale one.
Uh-huh.
They're introducing in October the 24th scale one, which is an all-new tool. And it comes with the Green Hornet and Kato figures.
No.
And that's going to be a pretty big model because nobody's ever done it in that scale. So,
I still have the Sam and Dean characters, 124 figures, that were 3D printed and sent to me by a glue trooper, and I've got them primed. I just haven't had a chance to get around to painting them. And they will go with my Supernatural Metallic R baby that I have in the family room, in the model room, right here in the middle of the house.
I went out and got at a show, I bought a 66 Chrysler 300, which was what Britt Reed's everyday car was. And I couldn't find a convertible. It was a promo. It was a hardtop. So I bought that and cut the roof off of it. And I painted it and detailed it so it looks like Britt Reed's car.
Mm-hmm.
And when the kit comes from round two, I'm going to get the Black Beauty. And I'm working on a diorama of the garage with the rotating floor.
Oh. Well, that happened halfway. But you got to give Andy and the gang credit because, even as an adult, when I watched that, I didn't stop to think about how they did it, which is unusual for me because normally that's the kind of thing I think about. But until Andy pointed out that he made that thing, it didn't dawn on me that they were models, which I should have thought, instinctively.
You know how you could tell? You could tell they're models.
How?
Watch the video of that shot when the cars rotate.
Mm-hmm.
The headlights on the Chrysler 300, you can see the glue holding the lenses on.
I was actually going to say that the headlight lenses didn't look right.
Yeah, that's how you could tell. Because up until that point, it's really hard to tell. Once you see the headlights, they were glued on. That's not a real car.
I wonder if somebody watching now knows where those models really are. I won't tell. Well, if you tell me, of course I'll tell. I won't tell on you, but I'll tell. Hey, I found where those models are. No, better not, because, good Lord. Can you imagine if somebody actually found out where those models were? Let's say, just for kicks and giggles, say that we found where those models were at. And the owner, I got to get rid of them, or whatever. What do you think they'd get on eBay or, to a collector? I bet they get 10 grand.
I was going to say 10,000.
Now that's for both of them probably, but
you'd get more for the Black Beauty than you'd get for the 300.
Yeah. But I think
people would say, you know what, I could do without the 300. I want the Black Beauty.
Saying 10 grand. Okay. So, the original Enterprise is in a museum, the 11-footer. The 3-footer, one of them's missing. If that could surface, that would be $3,000 to $5,000. Easy. I think the Enterprise from Next Generation, when Paramount sold off all of its props, I think the model, which was a 4 or 5 footer, I think it got 38 grand. They did a documentary when they sold off all the uniforms and everything. And
let me tell you something. If they ever found those two cars from the Green Hornet, you know where the perfect place to sell them, and they would get even bigger money than that?
One of the major car events or Hollywood.
Sell them at Barrett Jackson.
Barrett Jackson. Yeah.
You'd probably get 25 for it because you'd get a couple of guys bidding it up, and that's where you should sell them.
All right, let's just go with the Holy Grail then. Let's just suppose somehow the Smithsonian decided to put the 11-foot Enterprise up for sale. What's your guess?
50.
Oh, God. No, add a 0.
Huh?
The 11-foot Enterprise, the bidding would start at $250,000. It might start at 50. It'd hit $250,000 before you could answer your phone. I would say I'd go for at least $500,000. Max, do you want to
Be a
talk to the
pretty
sheriff
serious
in Sioux
collector out
Falls?
there.
Yeah, and then what do you do with it?
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Okay, Edward, why would I want to
and,
talk to the sheriff in Sioux Falls? Does he know who has the Chrysler models?
It's kind of like on Big Bang Theory when they got that time machine.
Turned out to be the
Time
time
machine.
machine.
For like a couple $100, and I'm like, wow, let's buy it. And then they had fun.
$750 they bought it for.
Okay,
And then they had to get it in the apartment.
okay,
Right.
time to play the stupid what if game. If you could buy a movie prop, the one that exists right now, I know what I'd get. What would you get? What movie prop would you want?
Oh, I get the DB5 from Goldfinger.
Ken?
That's pretty nice. Let me think about that for a second.
I think I would want the Landmaster from Damnation Alley.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
That could be fun. Airwolf.
Well, it crashed.
Before it crashed.
Yeah, I do not think that's how wishes work, but okay. After the show, it was obviously converted back to its civilian form. It was sold to an air ambulance company in Germany, and it crashed in bad weather.
Darn. How about the helicopter
There was a 10-foot Enterprise refit from Planet Hollywood that was thrown away. That's just a crime. I saw one of the 3-foot Enterprise refits at a Planet Hollywood hangar from the ceiling. I actually snapped a photo of it. And they also had some. They also had an SBD from. Might have been from the movie Midway, and they had it was just carved out of wood, and they had one of the Apollo capsules from Apollo 11, Apollo 13. The one that they crawl out of, that was in a Planet Hollywood. And I love Planet Hollywood because all the movie props are on display. They had Snake Plissken's Mac 10 Ingram with the suppressor, which turned out it was just a wooden block dummy gun. People don't forget when
Jack Fleming fan wants the Batmobile. Which one?
Yeah,
which one?
Which one? A
Meanwhile,
full-size
Planet
X-Wing,
Hollywood
that'd be
had
pretty
one of the
cool.
Dragulas.
Won't fit in my garage, though.
Planet Hollywood had one of the Dragulas, and they had a copy of the Black Beauty in the one in Puerto Rico.
Could have killed him with a full-size X-Wing. Now that...
I want a full-size
interesting.
operational X-Wing.
Where would you put it?
If it flies, I'll just
On
park
the
it.
lawn.
On the front lawn.
Yeah.
I live in a cul-de-sac. It'll fit right in the middle of the houses. After all, who's going to tell me to move my X-Wing?
The reindeer from No Highway in the Sky.
Oh, that's an airplane.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a model, yeah. God, I hate to think about how many of these models were just thrown away. At least some of the Jerry Anderson models, I think, got saved, but I think some of them might have gotten trashed also. And I realize at the studio it's just junk from an old show we don't make anymore. But like, guys, a little foresight, you know?
Harold Ellis
There's
says
only one
only
Batmobile.
one Batmobile.
And he is correct. He is correct.
I want that Batcopter.
The 1966 Batmobile?
Yeah, the one from the TV show.
What about the ones from the movies? Nobody wants those?
No, that's crap. No.
Oh. What about the last one? It looks like a tank.
The
Yeah,
Tumbler.
that's why it's crap.
The Tumbler.
Here we go. Marker wants the Disco Volante from Thunderball.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool ship. There's the boat you need, Ken.
What's that? What's the Disco Volante?
That was the boat from
It was
Thunderball that
Ship that
pops in
Largo
half.
had.
The front end
And
takes off.
the front half was a hydrofoil.
It could
I
split in
don't
two, and the front
remember
half
that.
was a hydrofoil.
Ship would break in two, and the front half was a hydrofoil where it would make ridiculous speeds. And then it would come back and it would mate back up with the rear part of the ship, so it just looked like a traditional yacht.
Kuda Killer says, X-Wing would fit in my front yard. Wife wouldn't like it there, though.
Have to deal with it. I think that Vulcan mock-up, that full-size Vulcan mock-up they made still underwater off the Caribbean. It's still a popular diving destination, unless it's fallen apart by now. God. One studio is just another man. Yeah, one studio's junk is another man's treasure. I remember back in the 70s, a magazine article, and you can see part of it online, I think at Dave's Warbirds, when one of the studios, the 20th Century Fox, was getting rid of a lot of their props, and they were selling off all their huge model airplanes they used in movies like Flight of the Phoenix, Tor, and all these others. And I'm like, God, I'd have killed to have one of those. The bus from the big bus, I remember that. What? Why did they get hit by that truck? What was that? Felt like a 55 Chevy pickup. Oh, Cameron's Maltese. Oh, it's way over 20 feet long. There's pictures of it on the internet. There's also that like 50-foot or 80-foot long model they made for Raise the Titanic, which is still sitting in Athens or in Greece or somewhere. You know, and of course the weather's not been kind to it, so it's been largely gutted. But the hull is still there, and they're trying to get money to restore it. But I don't think they ever will because. But it's the one that came out of the water, which is why if you see Raise the Titanic, that's why when the ship comes out of the water, it all looks so good because water doesn't scale. So they had to make it really big, so it's like 50 or 80 feet long, and it was a massive production. Of course, they did that before they knew the Titanic had broken in half when it sank.
How about a Johnny 5?
Yeah, Japanese carriers, Tor, sold for like $10K. One of them was here in Florida near St. Petersburg at a military museum. I don't know if that museum's still open or not, but and I think it was a 1 to 10 scale or something like that, or it was like 40 feet long, so it'd been like a 1 to 20 scale, and every airplane on it was hand carved because they didn't make kit models that were the correct scale. Oh, the Japanese make some great models. The Partridge Family bus.
The airships from the Mysterians.
There you go. Hey, you can mark me down for an Angel Interceptor.
Yeah.
What was that car they had in Captain Scarlet? That bulletproof tank car.
Oh, I forget the name of it, but I know the car, the red one.
No, the blue one. It was like the S100 or something, or SR. But it was like it didn't have a windshield. Yeah. It didn't have a windshield because and they had a driver facing the other way so they could stop, and the other guy would just take over and drive the other direction.
Hey Max, how about one of those cars, one of those Impalas from that show you like?
Yeah, from Supernatural. Heck yeah, baby. Wouldn't mind one of the Interceptors or one of the Eagles from the Jerry Anderson Productions, UFO and Space 1999. I saw one of the models from In Harm's Way, I think, at a Planet Hollywood. It was very low fidelity. And if you watch the movie, the ship model work isn't really that good.
For what? What was that?
From the movie In Harm's Way.
Yeah, the models were horrible.
And I saw one of them, and I mean, it looked like, you know those wooden Revell model destroyers that the Fletcher, like Fran built? Okay? It looks like one of those, just bigger. And it's about all the level of detail it had. Because it wasn't going to be on camera very long, but it still didn't look that great. And since water doesn't scale, it looked like a bathtub toy.
Bill Campbell Lance Revell wants Captain Nemo's car from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I call it the Automobile.
That's what I thought that was.
That was a pretty cool looking car. Well, guys, I guess.
Out front.
What?
It's one of the ones sitting out front.
Yep.
Yeah, Dieselland. That's right. Well, guys, it's a little after 9. I guess it kind of wraps it up for the night. Does anybody have any questions before we sign off here, or anything they need to bring up? A reminder: there's not going to be a live stream next week because I will be at a family function, and I got a lot going on over the next few days. Tomorrow, I guess I can share, is my 18th anniversary, and the next day is my birthday, 62. Whee!
On the 4th? Your
Yep.
birthday's the 4th?
And it's literally Labor Day.
Oh, I thought it was the 3rd. Okay.
Only for your mother.
No, my anniversary's the 3rd.
Right.
I made the anniversary. I made sure we got married the day for my birthday, so I wouldn't forget an anniversary. You guys know how I forget things. Next group build. Okay, hold on. That's a excellent question. Let me open that up. I got it right here. Updated build schedule. Okay. It's ugly aircraft, auto, or Halloween build due by Halloween. So ugly. It's got to be ugly. It can really be an ugly anything, but I'm not counting kaiju or monsters because they're ugly by design. Something like an Edsel or something like ugly aircraft.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Ugly aircraft, auto, or Halloween build. And that'll be due
Just so I'm
on...
build an Edsel.
And an Edsel's an automatic entry. I know
How
you
about an Edsel eating somebody?
Yeah, like the profit margin at Ford.
Yeah, an Edsel eating a Pacer.
But anyway, that'll be the next one, and that's going to be due on Halloween.
When is Halloween this year?
It's always on October 31st.
I know that.
I knew he was going to say.
Oh,
When you said that, I said, I know he's going to say that.
He
know
just
it.
walks
It's
right
on a
into
Tuesday.
it. It's like Charlie Brown in the football when Lucy holds it.
It is on a Tuesday.
Tuesday,
It's
yes.
the last Tuesday of October.
Because it's the 31st. Right?
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Is he still talking?
Yeah, I'm right here.
I don't know what. Oh, there he is. Okay. Oh.
Okay. I thought we
Godzilla
lost
throwing,
him.
Godzilla throwing up an Edsel.
What about Godzilla and an Edsel?
Godzilla throwing up an Edsel.
God. Frankenstein's monster driving an Edsel.
You are free to do crossovers if you like. Well, guys,
ugly car like the VW Bug from the Cars That Ate Paris. That sounds like it has promise.
Now we have to go out and find a kid of a Pontiac Aztec.
well, guys, it's that time. So you want to say your nighty nights, and I'll sign off and let the folks talk with each other for a little while.
Good night, all, and thank you for participating. Look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks everybody for showing up. We really do appreciate you and your comments. Some of them are really, really good, and we have a lot of fun with them. So thanks for joining us.
Guys, thanks once again, and as all, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And as always, model on.
Give me a second night. I need to get my story straight. My friends are in the bathroom getting higher than the Empire State. My lover, she is waiting for me just across the bar. My seat's been taken by some sunglasses asking about a scar. And I know I gave it to you months ago. I know you're trying to forget, but between the drinks and subtle things, the holes in my apologies, you know, I'm trying hard to take it back. So if by the time the bar closes and you feel like falling down, I'll carry you home tonight.
and say